Thank you. I begin with some very sad news. Ravid Chaim just passed away, 2 weeks old. And this child didn't stand a chance. His mother was murdered in cold blood. For what? For driving to a hospital? To give birth to a newborn baby, to bring life into this world. But Ravid Chaim's name should be in the media, on the pages of every major media outlet. Is it? Is it? We hope so. Albert, I have to say, you've done it again. The prayer breakfast has already become legend. And congratulations on all the work that you and your team have done each and every year, each and every session, to bring your message home. And speaking of getting it right, in November of 1863, Abraham Lincoln did just that, delivering the Gettysburg Address, only 271 words spoken in merely 2 minutes. The president understood that you have 1 minute to get the message right, because today's media storm creates a million distortions. A clear, true message has a better chance of reaching its audience than one tossed like a bottle into the algorithmic sea, where meanings shattered by waves of noise, lies, and rebuttals. We're living through an age where the people have little patience, little attention span, and certainly critical thinking has gone out the window. Getting back to the message, look, for instance, into the horrific example of the Hamas-Israel war. How many lives must be cut short? Every day, another one. How much blood must be spilled to remind the world that Israel did not begin the brutal attack on October 7th? I remember distinctly thinking, here comes the news cycle of the century. How will Israel fail this time in its messaging? It has time and time again. Why is Israel's message not resonating? This decades-old problem is not being solved. It's interesting to note that Israel has tried to get the message right, and in some ways they did. October 7th happens, October 8th, the war begins. And for almost 8 months, the pages talk in the newspapers talk about the war that Israel has to fight on multiple fronts. But how long can that message last? It's not that many Israeli ministries aren't trying to make a difference. It's not that the influencer arena didn't become the chic weapon of information warfare, or that the numerous talented IDF spokespeople flooding international outlets didn't make an impact. They did, and they didn't. Now, I want to give you an example. And with all the best of intention, the Foreign Ministry was given $150 million this year to deal with Israel's message to the world. The caveat, my friends, is they have to use it up by the end of this year. And between you and me, how much messaging can you do in several months? And the wars continue, and the anti-Semitism continues, and the misinformation continues. It's not as if groups of independently talented PR professionals weren't penning op-eds, insisting that they had the answer to Israel's age-old messaging problem. It's not as if Jewish organizations, many caught flat-footed as universities became targets, even before the war. They didn't finally mobilize when pro-Hamas encampments spread during the war. Some realized their failure, others rushed to the rescue. To save Israel's viewpoint, the Jewish viewpoint, the Judeo-Christian viewpoint, or simply the ethical viewpoint. I was on these campuses for years and asking, why was Qatar funding chairs in these universities? I was shouting the message out. And when this went down, I wrote a 4,000-page story, which was the cover of the LA Jewish Journal, on the history of what happened in terms of Qatar funding the universities. Still, the day has not been saved. News is instantaneous. The swamp of social media turns tragedy into sound bites for a distracted generation, many of whom struggle to focus on one tweet, let alone to read a full article in context. Now let's step back and examine the reality. A dynamic young couple, Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, are murdered in cold blood in Washington, D.C. It didn't matter if they were Jewish, or in Yaron's case, that he was a practicing Christian. News stations report the brutal attack. For 24 to 48 hours, maybe a bit longer, every former and current ambassador was called to comment. Anyone who knew Yaron and Sarah became fair game. The message: two innocent, idealistic young people working at the Israeli embassy were shot by a pro-Palestinian attacker from Chicago who shouted "Free Palestine" after the murder. The coverage expanded. Who were they? Why was there security that failed? What about the funerals, the perpetrator, the motives, his prosecution? Some hoped that this act of terror would spark global outrage. Australia, the UAE, France, Germany, Italy, UK, and the United States condemned it. How many other countries didn't? Now, it may say something about the Abraham Accords and for the Abraham Accords, but it doesn't say enough about humanity. This story's shelf life will be longer than others, but not by much. It marks a dangerous rise in anti-Semitism, a rise many saw coming. Anti-Semitism has existed for thousands of years. Today, it fuels the lopsided media narrative that we all see today. This anti-Semitism was amplified when a poster found at Humboldt University in Berlin featured a red arrow above Yaron's face, a symbol seen in Hamas videos targeting Israeli soldiers. Search this story and that you'll find it in some Jewish news outlets, a few conservative European sites, but where is the mainstream media? If they fail to report these stories, they become complicit in keeping them hidden. This is the environment in which we find ourselves today. The tragic irony: Yaron and Sarah believed in peace. She worked with Tech to Peace. They met and fell in love while working at the embassy. She believed in dialogue. He supported the Abraham Accords. They died attending an event to facilitate aid into Gaza. Elias Rodriguez, the shooter, reportedly told police, "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza." Elias, you cruel, ignorant fool, you got it all wrong on all accounts. And yet online, his message found an amplifier. On TikTok, the 19-year-old influencer Guy Christensen, who is neither Arab nor Jewish, posted a video to more than his 3 million followers, calling the victims Zionist officials and refusing to condemn the murders. He referred to Rodriguez as a resistance fighter. TikTok eventually removed the video, but not before it was viewed hundreds of thousands of times, and herein lies the huge problem. This single story now competes with thousands of others, local, national, and international. It's a blip in our digital universe, and that in part is the problem. Most people don't wake up thinking about the war in Israel. They check the weather, their stocks, the sports scores. Remember Israel in its glory when high-tech stories boomed? Today, the startup nation news has faded, replaced by details of war, incomplete and often lacking context. Too many of these stories fill the minds of too many readers. News consumers are chasing entertainment-style headlines and clickbait. And that brings us to the battlefield of attention, a battlefield Israel is losing. Israel is fighting a war on 8 physical fronts: Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the West Bank, which is a story I feel is totally underreported, the Houthis in Yemen, armed groups in Syria, Shiite factions in Iraq, Iran, international pressure from global institutions, and public opinion. Kind of hard to digest. Israeli ambassador to the United States, Yechiel Leiter, called the shooting of his embassy's personnel political violence. He drew a direct connection between campus incitement and the deadly attack. His words reflect the scope of what Israel faces. This isn't only a war of weapons, but a war of messages, and the line between the two is getting thinner. And there's a 9th front, the front that I see, the front of the battlefield of the narrative. And this is what Israel calls hasbara, public diplomacy. It's meant to shape international perception in Israel's favor. On this front, Israel is failing. Why? Partly because government ministries can't coordinate efficiently in real time. Transparency is lacking. Bureaucracy slows progress. Projects stall. And I gave you an example earlier in terms of the foreign ministry's amount of money that they're holding and being able to utilize it in real time. The IDF takes a year to respond to basic press inquiries. If at all, journalists receive no comment daily. Thousands have covered the war, yet most were denied access, save for a few closely supervised visits. Our news agency is one of the few with reporters in Israel, Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, and Pakistan, to name a few. It's dangerous and it's complicated. Still, the lack of access has made things only a little worse. If Israel's messaging is this ineffective, why continue to keep journalists out? Yes, there's concern for their safety, and yes, many reporters have historically shown bias against Israel. But take the example of malnourished children in Gaza. Photos circulate claiming genocide. That narrative is winning. If Israel allowed greater media access, even with guidelines, could it get any worse? Unless, of course, Israel isn't telling a complete story. And that raises a deeper issue. Journalism itself. Journalism is supposed to be a checks and balances on government, not a mouthpiece. It's essential to democracy. Without it, nations crumble into autocracy. You may not want to hear it, but Israel isn't always right. Our children aren't always right. It must take responsibility when it's wrong, because doing it shapes how people perceive its actions when it's right. Within Israel, there's division. Some prioritize finishing Hamas. Others prioritize the return of all hostages. Netanyahu says both goals are possible, but the public is skeptical. And when Israelis hold signs at demonstrations demanding Trump save us from Bibi, it sends mixed messages to the world. It's hard to imagine the burden Netanyahu carries. There were reportedly 20 living hostages. Hamas won't give them up without a fight. They have nothing to lose. Netanyahu is known for his messaging skills, yet this time his message is not reaching the world. Fragmented narratives from within Israel weaken the global message. Let me return now, though, to clickbait. At the media line, we once ran a story headlined, "Analysis, Gulf sources debate if Trump will recognize a Palestinian state." Fair game, a question asked by many. A night editor at the Jerusalem Post changed it to "Donald Trump to announce U.S. recognizes Palestinian state, Gulf diplomat source claims." The story went viral. Israeli, Turkish, Indian, and Italian outlets picked it up. Ambassador Mike Huckabee pushed back, The media line took the heat until the Jerusalem Report retracted and corrected the headline. Clickbait can cut both ways. When it comes to Israel, every misleading headline is a lost opportunity. The Palestinian side has more clicks, more reach, more languages. This is the social media war. It's where the fight for Israel's narrative is being won and lost. Kanye West, of all people, recently posted an apology for his anti-Semitism after the murder of Yaron and Sarah. It's rare, but a welcome moment of reality. If only others would follow. But for Israel to shift the tide, it needs a new mindset, new rules, and a new playbook. Any message must ask, what is the message? Who delivers it? How is it delivered? Does it resonate? And where? Israel is dealing with more fallout than the world realizes. Soldiers witnessing comrades blown up before their eyes. Families who wake up with nightmares wondering if their child or children are still in Gaza. The orphans, the widows. The journalists reliving the trauma by telling these stories every single day. These people all have PTSD. As a matter of fact, there might be 3 million people in Israel who have PTSD. And this is a story that doesn't get out. These stories make up Israel's message and shape public opinion too. I believe that in love and war, all is fair if done ethically and transparently. This is a long road, my friends. There are no shortcuts. Social media won't fix it, and sound bites won't solve it. Social media needs its own accountability. Influencers are not journalists. Even opinion writers often lack the expertise that journalists bring. Labeling content, news, opinion, and influencer would help clean up the information swamp. Banning anti-Semitic content and terrorism promoting message would help too. If governments and universities enforced existing anti-hate speech, especially against calls for global intifada, we'd see progress. Where do we draw the line between free speech and hate speech or incitement? A line must be drawn. Dr. Ophir Dayan, a researcher at the Israel Institute for National Security Affairs, cites Taiwan's fight against the Chinese social media influence on social media worth examining. They had a rapid response strategy for disinformation known as the 222 rule, where they respond to any false claim within 2 hours using 200 words, she explained. It's a method designed for the speed and visual language of social media. The world needs more trained journalists because every single day there's a new story in Iran and a new story in Syria and a new story in Qatar and a new story in Pakistan and a new story in Afghanistan. And folks, I'm tired. It doesn't stop. I don't sleep but 3 hours a night. But we are proud to say that we train journalists. We have a press and policy student program that has signed more than 20 universities, giving them credit so that they can come to Jerusalem and train and learn how to write a story, how to research, how to source, how to understand the narratives, and then to report accurately and tell the truth, folks. The world needs people with platforms who are not afraid to speak out. Where are the artists? And I don't mean the 10. Where are the CEOs, the students, the professors, the athletes? They need to speak up. We need to teach young people that believing in your cause isn't enough. Communication requires listening. Effective messaging requires understanding both sides. Right now, this message mostly reaches the choir. Ignoring the other side will only backfire. That's why journalism in both Israel and the United States feels broken. People aren't working together towards a shared goal, and that's dangerous. There are exceptions. when a terrorist group defies humanity and savagely kills 1,200 innocent people on a Sabbath and kidnaps 271 more, so that no one should ever forget this. That narrative must not just be told, it must be shouted, repeated, and cemented. That message must be unified, and it must be addressed to the world, and many of the rest of the messages will become merely footnotes in history.